And what they found is they found people wandering aimlessly around the deck of the ship. They found some people actually integrated into the deck of the ship with arms in, maybe a shoulder and a head sticking out.
Wow.
In other words, when the thing transitioned into hyperspace, if you moved, everything became energetic. Means you could move through that wall. If when it came back and was solid, if you were in that wall, you became part of that wall. Well, as Tom Bearden talks of this theory and concept quite heavily, you know, about putting the pencil through a piece of metal and having it be integrated into the piece of metal. You know, that's been a famous accidental experiment that was done years ago that still nobody knows how to do at this point. But either way, the Navy saw, yes, the experiment worked. It was a tremendous success, but it also literally destroyed the mind of the men on the ship. So it was a success, but it was also a failure. So of course they abandoned that project, and they dumped the money into the Manhattan Project and developed the atomic bomb, bombed the bejesus out of the Japanese, and got us to win the war that way. In the meantime, they had won the German front essentially through psychological means. And just marching in with the Allies. But there was a lot of propaganda, a lot of psychological stuff being used on the Germans as well. But it was easy because the Germans were also disheartened at that point too. So the war was won, and it was decided, well, now we're up to 1948. You know, let's relaunch the Rainbow Project and see if we can figure out why did the men go nuts. So they relaunched it, split into two projects.
What happened to all these men?
As far as we know, they were sucked into a sane asylum mainly.
So they're probably still alive today.
Some of them are still alive today.
Sure. Makes sense.
But now, let's go to 1948. They relaunched the project again. They had two phases they had to solve. They had to solve the engineering problem. They had to get the thing reproducible and small enough that it wouldn't take a battleship to hold the equipment. So that ended up went out to Los Alamos Laboratory in New Mexico, and that's what we call the stealth technology today, the third level of stealth. The first is the radar cross-section, it doesn't reflect much signal. The second is the carbon coating that absorbs the signal. The third is the electromagnetic bottle, which came out of the Philadelphia experiment research. The third is somewhat known but not talked of that much. You see it referred to fleetingly in articles in trade publications and such in the aircraft world. But the other side...
Which is the electromagnetic propulsion system?
No, it's the electromagnetic
field
bottle.
generation.
It's the field generation that makes it essentially disappear.
Okay.
And they can get full invisibility as well as radar invisibility with the stealth. But that's not what we're here to discuss. That is a military secret, rightfully so. It's in our arsenal and it is for the defense of the United States. So we're not going to go into how that works. Now, the second part that they had to solve is they had to figure out why did the people go nuts. So they launched the human factors side. That was sent out to Brookhaven National Labs right here on Long Island because they had the largest human factors research in the country. So that ended up out here on Long Island, that part of the project. And of course that was the heavier part because the other stuff was just engineering, physics and engineering to solve. You know, they already had the basis, they just had to develop it. So that was just essentially an industrial R&D project.
Well, when you're saying they already had the basis, how did they arrive at the basis?
From the Philadelphia experiment.
Okay. How did they arrive at why did they initiate the Philadelphia experiment? I mean, what grounds did they have to initiate the Philadelphia experiment?
Because the Institute of Advanced Sciences had run a number of small tests and proved that the theory worked.
Okay.
That they made models of ships disappear. They had a test in the Brooklyn Navy Yard where they had a destroyer tethered between two others, had the coils on the base of the destroyer, and all the equipment was on the other two, and they made that ship radar invisible.
Okay.
In other words, they had there was a good series of R&D work leading up to this thing.
Okay, and those technologies are being used right now in the stealth bomber.
Of course, it's highly evolved and more developed, so there's something that you don't need a battleship to move around. They started out with very large generators, and they got it down to where They put these things that run off of propeller-driven generators that are on the aircraft, very much the way our electronic countermeasures devices, the radar jamming facilities are ran. They're pods that typically sit on the airplane, although the B-1 has the equipment integrated in the airplane itself. But for years, these radar jamming systems were pods that typically they hung on the end of the wings.
Like an AWACS.
Like an AWACS, yeah. AWACS is a surveillance, a radio surveillance deal. But either way, that's not what we're here to discuss.
Next.
Now, they launched the human factors research. They actually integrated it with the Phoenix project, which was still being carried on at the Brookhaven Labs. It had taken work from MK Ultra, had taken work from Wilhelm Reich, had taken work from many sectors, including the Philadelphia experiment, and they integrated this all into one super mind research project. And they finally developed the stealth technology so that they could literally synthesize the Earth references that human beings needed. One of the reasons they went nuts is that the human beings need the electromagnetic background of the Earth. When that bottle was sealed, like it was on the Eldridge, open-ended just a Montauk, and it became in the vortex, the electromagnetic background that we need, the Schumann resonances, the noise background of the planet, was lost. And people went nuts because of it. They had no basis. They didn't know where they were. And eventually, with all the high degree of electromagnetic fields, the mind broke. They learned how to synthesize that background and how to concentrate the fields into a bottle. So the inside, it was pretty much neutral and pleasant like the Earth. Of course, all the final reports were written. The final report, the last couple of paragraphs, spoke of that this is the first time we have definite solid evidence that the mind of man is electromagnetic and that it can be influenced by electromagnetic fields from the outside, and that this maybe should be going into as for crowd control, military applications. Congress said no, they didn't want it. Congress got the report on the early part of the Phoenix project. Congress supposedly thought they stopped the Phoenix project.
Is that public access information? I mean, is that
it is secret
FOIA?
still.
Oh, it's not.
It is secret still. See, the information comes very roundabout way from the investigation that Senator Goldwater reportedly did on this work. And these guys out of Brookhaven had already built their kingdom. So they wanted to keep it going. So somebody got the idea, let's go and talk to the military direct. So they went to people in the Joint Chiefs of Staff and said, hey, how would you like a weapon? You throw the switch, the enemy throws up their hands and surrenders. Of course, it was, I'd love that weapon. So they said, well, we can develop it. We have we have a start on it, but we got to do it in secrecy. Of course, the military was already quite familiar with secrecy. So it was launched as a black hole project, and the military suggested, well, you can't do it. They said, we can't do it at Brookhaven Labs because we were too much under scrutiny of the political government. You got any ideas of where we could do the research? We want to be close to Brookhaven Labs, Princeton, and MIT. So they said, well, we got this old Air Force base that's now deserted on the eastern tip of Long Island, Montauk Air Force Base. It's a small town. There isn't a lot of people in it. You can go out there and be pretty much secluded. Back then, in the early 70s, this was like 1969, 1970, I have to add to it. It was a small, sleepy little town. It wasn't big. It wasn't the vacation capital yet at that point. So the group said, great, that sounds like an excellent place.
Okay, and we're at what year now?
This is now about 72.
Okay.
It was decided to move it all out to the old Montauk Air Force Base.
Okay.
They went out there, they masqueraded as Air Force personnel. They brought some Air Force personnel in also at the same time. And they reactivated the old SAGE radar because it transmitted on the same frequency range that Wilhelm Reich used for his orgone studies.